My name is Dr. Rachel Scott. I'm lecturer in World and Hispanic Literatures. I'm also director of the degree programme in Comparative Literature and Culture, and I'm going to be talking a little bit today about studying comparative literature and culture. You can tell from the title of the degree programme that it includes not only literature but cultures, and by this we mean visual arts, film, material objects, as well as critical theories. And the degree programme is really unique and flexible and offers you the chance to study a really wide variety of texts, of visual arts, of films and critical theories. So for example, our students may study not only Homer and earlier literatures, all the way through to 21st century artists and authors. An example of the types of critical theories and themes that we work with, there's a huge variety there. You can dip into almost anything from post-colonialism, eco-criticism, realism, the avant-garde, ideas of gender, race, sexuality. You can really get your teeth into so many interesting different topics. Everything that you study is available in English or in English translation, so we don't require you to have knowledge of other languages for this degree programme. However, a degree in comparative literature and culture is not only about comparing texts or authors or works of art from one place or language to another. We do ask you to think about similarities and differences, but it's far more than this. By placing these texts and authors in dialogue with one another, we're actually asking you to critically think about and assess how cultures from different parts of the world and different times and in different languages interpret, create knowledge of and create understanding of the world around us. So it's a degree programme that really broadens your perspectives on the world, and it provides you with some really critical analytical skills and cross-cultural awareness that really gives you the edge in the global marketplace, and we think that makes for a really fascinating combination. So we obviously want you to enjoy the texts and the material objects and visual cultures that you're studying, of course we do, but we also get you to approach them critically and to think about them critically. So we place these texts and authors and artists in their historical, social and chronological contexts. We get you to think not only about the role of literature and cultures in society, but also the role of the past and how our understanding of the present is formed by our understanding of historical circumstances and events and texts. We also bring in questions of colonialism, of capitalism, of eco-criticism, and we get you to think as well about, get you to critically analyse the very categories that we use to understand the world, that we use to think about literature and about theories and about ourselves. So we're getting you to dive into what it means to be human as well, what it means to live in society, to relate to others, and how literatures and cultures, artworks from all different periods and places have shaped who we are and how we think about the world today. We also think about what we mean by the canon. You know, what do we mean when we talk about great authors of English literature, Spanish literature, French literature? Who gets to be included? Who decides? But also whose voices are missing. So we ask you to, or we bring in a diverse range of perspectives. This is a degree that really goes beyond the Eurocentric view of literature, society and culture. So we include voices from across the world that have lived through different experiences that can bring about perspectives that can really change your view on the world around you. And we review our content regularly. So we're always questioning, is this fit for purpose? Do the texts and the authors that we study contribute to an understanding and also critically analyse contemporary society? Do they get you to challenge your view of the world as well? I mentioned that all of the materials are provided in English or in English translation, but we don't shy away from the fact that we teach in translation. We get students to think about this, again, to problematize it, to investigate how English is a dominant language in the global literary and cultural scene, and also to question what the purpose of translation is. You know, what changes in the way that we read texts and artworks if we're doing so through the lens of an Anglophone reader rather than the language of origin. So as I said, there's no requirement to have different languages, but we do get you thinking think about the power of words, the power of language, the way that it's used in society, and to not only to represent, but also to create the very world that we live in. So a degree in Comparative Literature and Culture is for students that might have enjoyed studying English literature at A-level, but they want something more. They want something a bit different. So as I said, this goes beyond a very Eurocentric view, and it includes texts from all over the world, from languages, from a great variety of original languages. So we're bringing in questions of world literature, we're bringing in something that goes beyond the Anglophone and the dominant English as the dominant view of literature in a global marketplace. Our assessments and our teaching styles are all geared towards very different types of learners, different learning activities. So we include lectures, small group work, tutorials. We also have an online component that might be quizzes or forums. We'll get you doing presentations. So all of these will go towards creating learners that are really fit for the global marketplace, that have critical analytical skills, that have cross-cultural awareness, that have an ability to work with others, teamwork, as well as independent, time management, self-awareness. And so we think that our degree in Comparative Literature and Culture really gives you that critical edge in today's marketplace. Although the materials that you'll be studying are offered to you in English or in English translation, we don't shy away from the fact that we're teaching in translation. We get you to interrogate this. We get you to think about how English is the global, a dominant global language in the literary and cultural marketplace. And we get you thinking as well about the power of words, about the power of language to act in society, but also to create the very world that we live in. And so, although you don't need knowledge of additional languages for this degree program, thinking about language is a key part of it. A degree in Comparative Literature and Culture is unique and is flexible. You have the opportunity to study Comparative Literature and Culture as a single honours, or you can study it as a joint with other subjects such as English or drama or philosophy. You don't need to have an additional language to study Comparative Literature and Culture on its own, but if you are interested in languages, then you can take it as a joint with translation studies or with modern languages. And therefore you have the opportunity to study another language alongside this really broad view of literature and culture from a global perspective. In their first year, CLC students take a core module which introduces them to some of the key theoretical ideas behind what it means to study comparative literature. So we'll ask questions about, well, what is comparative literature? How do you study it? What is an author? How do genres contribute to our understanding of literature? Are they useful, for example? We'll also be looking at some key theoretical backgrounds about comparative literature and studying it. And you'll be building on this knowledge as you go through your degree program. So the first year is more of an introduction. And alongside these key ideas about what Comp Lit is and how you study it, we also introduce you to 4 really interesting texts that lay the basis for your knowledge for the rest of your degree program. And these texts sort of exemplify the way that we work in comparative literature and culture. So they're taken from across the world. They address some really interesting, really fundamental ideas such as gender, sexuality, race, post-colonialism, Orientalism. They also address concepts of authorship, adaptation, interpretation. So currently this year students have been studying Homer's The Iliad. They've been studying a French text by Gustave Flaubert, A Simple Heart. They've been studying a Latin American text of magical realism by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Love in a Time of Cholera. And they've also been studying Assia Djibar's Women of Algiers in Their Apartments. And these 4 texts are compared and contrasted, but they're also placed into dialogue. And so these themes of race, gender, sexuality, authorship, post-colonialism, women's voices, they're threaded throughout the course. And then built upon in the core modules that you'll be taking in your second year, and of course with the optional modules that you'll be able to take throughout your degree programme. The optional modules that you can take throughout your degree programme are quite varied again, and not all of them will have a comparative element. So you may be able to take courses offered by staff members who teach in the respective language areas, French, Italian, German and Spanish. You also have the opportunity to take modules looking at visual arts, looking at fashion, for example, film, photography, and art throughout the 20th century. And so there's a huge variety of options that you can take, and this means that you can really shape the degree that you take here at Royal Holloway depending on your interests. I think that the three main skills that students of comparative literature and culture come away with from this degree programme are critical thinking, communication skills and cross-cultural awareness. So for critical thinking, we're getting you to, in some cases, apply critical theories such as post-colonialism, the avant-garde, structuralism, to the particular literary or artistic works that we're looking at. We're getting you to do close textual analysis of these literary works, and we're getting you to bring your own perspective, to really hone your own critical viewpoint of the sorts of criticism that's already been written on these materials, and also on the texts and the artists and the artworks themselves. Communication will be really important. We're developing you as communicators who are able to write fluently, communicate verbally fluently, and also work in teams to present your ideas in group presentations, for example. And so all of this comes together in the teaching and the assessments that we offer on the modules. Cross-cultural awareness is obviously a big one. By studying texts, authors, artworks from all over the world, you're really gaining new perspectives on our societies, on the world around, on who we are as human beings. And this means that when you enter the job market, you do so with an ability to empathise with others and to really see life from other points of view. All three of these and the other skills that you'll gain through the degree programme will really stand you in good stead for the job market. And some of our graduates have gone on to work in areas such as publishing, translation, arts management, the heritage sector, teaching and translation, but also as varied as law, consultancy and the financial sector. So there's a really broad world of work out there that you'll be able to access with this degree. I think the Department for Languages, Literatures and Cultures is a really stimulating place to work and teach in. We have students from a variety of degree programmes, from comparative literature and culture, translation studies, modern languages, liberal arts, the history of art and visual cultures. And this makes for a really rewarding, really truly interdisciplinary department to work in, where you get a lot of inspiration from your colleagues who are working often in very different areas. You often, and you're also in your teaching exposed to students that come from different degree programmes and therefore have a very different take on what it means to study literature or to study art or to study the cultures of the world. I am a medievalist and early modernist by background and training. I did a first degree in modern languages and an MA in medieval studies, and my PhD focused on a late medieval Spanish text and its early modern reception in Spain and Italy. I'm really interested in how texts and ideas travel, how they're adapted, how they're translated, and how their meaning changes depending on the context in which they are read and used and thought about. So my particular specialism is Iberia between the 13th century and the 17th century. But I take a very transnational, if not global, perspective. So I place the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, within this nexus of international relations, cross-cultural exchange. I also use Iberia's position as a global power in the medieval period and the early modern period to think about ideas of identity, of cross-cultural relations, of how cultures have influenced one another in order to create the literatures, the ideas, the cultures that we have today in contemporary society. I'm also really interested in how we today in the modern world think about the past, and how historical figures and how historical ideas, texts, artworks are put to use for ideological reasons today. My current project traces the European reception of a medieval Arabic collection of exemplary fables, and its title in Arabic is Kalila wa Dimna, but it's been known by various different names in the European languages that it's been translated into. And my particular research at the minute is looking at 3 translations into Spanish, one from the 13th century from Arabic, one from the 15th century from Latin, and one from the 17th century from Turkish. And I'm interested to see how the fables are translated and used in these different contexts, and also how the book is used as a sort of symbol of political power and national identity throughout the centuries.